Welcome to Nervous Rex. I'm sitting here with Kyle Kingsbury, recent friend, recent podcast buddy. I did yours recently, and now you're doing mine. Thank you for coming all the way to Hollywood from the West Side, because if people don't know, that is kind of a mission when you're in LA. That's like it's a commute.
Yeah, and it's, you know, I think obviously I have no issues coming here. I drove all the way down from Sacktown, but we wanted to rent a minivan for the trip, a Toyota Sienna or something similar. And of course we get to the rental place, and this is like one of the nice ways the universe gets me to roll with the punches. We get there and they're like, "Sir, we're all out of minivans, but we've upgraded you at no extra charge to a 12-passenger rapist van."
There you go, the rapey van. Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
Well, that just increased gas mileage by like 2 times, and LA's gonna be really fun.
Right.
So fucking finding parking, getting that thing around. Thankfully, you hooked us up with a valet, but
yeah. So you flew in from Austin to NorCal, and you're just doing the whole run down through LA to ending up in San Diego. You're from NorCal originally, if I'm not mistaken. We're both NorCal boys. Where'd you grow up?
Sunnyvale and Cupertino.
Okay.
South Peninsula.
Okay, cool. And you obviously, you know, you went to ASU later. You played some football. Obviously, most people know you from your UFC career on Joe Rogan. I watched I watched it before. How many Rogans have you done?
Just 2.
Okay,
Did you watch the first or the second?
I think it was the second one, because there was a lot of Trump talk in the beginning.
Okay,
so I just rewatched it.
2.
Yeah, I watched it again on the way over here, just kind of to catch up and see if there was anything to talk about.
That's probably the worst thing you could have listened to for that. Because the first time I went on, we talked keto, fighting, psychedelics, like everything I'm into, all the biohacks, whatever the fuck you want to call it. And then the second one, it was like 2 homies hanging out. Joe got blasted. We talked Trump, the fucking space missions and all this shit. Space Force or whatever he's trying to design. And then we went to the Dick Olympics and women hanging like Kegel exercises with a 10-pound weight in between their vag. Like it was obnoxious, but it was still fun. But I mean, I don't know that I draw much from that. Yeah,
I should. I don't even think I've seen the other one, so I'll check that one out. So originally I was going to come out to Austin, see you. I had something come up, so I couldn't come out to see you. I still want to come out and kind of see your guys' whole Onit world out there, because from what I understand, you guys got a pretty sweet setup out there. I think Chris Ryan was the one who told me he's been out there with you, right?
He's been out there. I have not been there with him. I met him for the first time. I think I met him before this in LA. Yeah, with Wim Hof and a few other people. And then you were there. That's right. Aaron Alexander. That's right. That was a dope day.
That was a dope day, because I got to do not personal, but it was a handful of us doing Wim Hof in your guys' Airbnb living room, which was awesome. And then I got him on the podcast and became friends with him. And he's somebody that I just want to learn more from that guy.
He's a legend.
Oh man, he's the real deal. He's like a real yogi. He's a white yogi of sorts.
He is.
He knows his shit, man. The cold and the breath work I've tried, you know, we've talked about this before, but I'm on that path of trying, you know, to do things that are way outside my comfort zone to grow and learn and become just finding out new shit. And from my experience, the cold and the breath work is a shortcut to getting the fuck out of your prefrontal cortex monkey brain for me.
Oh, no doubt.
That shuts it up.
Yeah.
Because I'll go do yoga and meditation, and that doesn't necessarily get me out of my head. And you talked about this on Rogan, actually. I forget in what context, but you know, going to play basketball gets me out of my head more than yoga or meditation. Having an activity to do shuts up that monkey brain more. So that's weird how something that I've been doing my whole life, I didn't even realize, oh wait, basketball could get me to get out of there for a little bit.
Think of all the things that give you flow, right?
Exactly.
That's the flow, you're in the moment. That's the quiet mind. That's why people aren't adrenaline junkies, they're flow junkies.
That's it.
And I think that's something that I check in on. People ask me how I meditate. I'm not sitting quietly. That might happen once a week tops. But I'll be doing Tai Chi, breath work, something. I'll go for a walking meditation, because oftentimes if I have anxiety or thoughts piling up, sitting quietly isn't going to fucking help that.
Yeah, it's
right?
true.
I got to move a little bit more.
Or even, you don't realize it, but even if you just do one thing at a time, I can't remember if this was the Buddhist philosophy or something along those lines, where, you know, when you're eating, just eat. When you're walking, just walk. If you're on your phone doing other shit, you're not really in the moment. And even just taking a walk could be meditative. Even, you know, normal mundane activities can be just as effective as sitting there trying to not think, which I also learned, it's not about trying to not think. It's more of a filtration device where you're taking out the trash, so to speak.
Yeah.
You go sit there and have all these thoughts, and I'd say about 15 minutes into me trying to do my meditation, I start to get out of there a little bit and start to just listen and breathe. But it takes a minute, man. It's not easy. You know, to sit there with your own thoughts and yourself is challenging for me, and I think for a lot of people to just sit there with
100%.
yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I imagine you being a martial artist, that seems to be a good structure and a good, talk about flow. I mean, what more than that gets you out of your head and being in the moment? Is that fair to say?
Yeah. When I was losing fights, which happened often towards the end of my career, I was oftentimes in the monkey mind and there was no way out.
Right.
At least, so that was something I never considered a level of mastery in the fight game. Post-fighting, I knew that was something, like I'd felt it in the fights. If I got taken down, I might think like, fuck, I'm losing this round, rather than get the fuck up. This is what you need to do to stand up. So rather than being methodical to what I need to do to succeed, there was a lot of what's going to happen this round in the judge's eyes, all that kind of shit. And it never worked out well. Right. And there's been fights in the past where I was winning and I had no thought in my mind other than confidence and knowing exactly how I wanted to attack. Right.
And that bridged your relationship with Joe to how did you get with the Onit family and become such a part of the team that led to this chapter of your life, which led to a lot of other cool shit that you're doing. From my experience hanging out with you, doing psychedelics, we met at Burning Man.
Oh yeah.
I try to limit my Burning Man talk because I remember before I went and people talk about it, it's just hard to understand and it could come off, you know, I don't want to say holier than thou, but it can seem that way unless you've gone and experienced it. But we had a great fucking time.
Amazing time.
On Diplo's art car.
Yeah.
That was fucking rad.
Super rad.
Yeah, and I got to meet you and Aubrey together, and I can't wait to go back.
Yeah, it's a great place.
You going this year?
I'm going to miss this year. We're trying to get
Really?
pregnant. But getting to Onit was, I had a podcast. We were living in Vegas near my wife's family. And I had the call in to go to PaleoFX just to meet people, and got there, met Aubrey, we hit it off. Then we actually shared the same flight back to Vegas because they were looking at opening the second Onit gym there. So me, Aubrey, and John Wolf, who's one of the chiefs at Onit, one of the head trainers, he's like the coach's trainer. Does a lot of the programming there. We all traded war stories, talked ayahuasca, talked fasting, hot and cold therapy, fighting, mindset, everything in between, diet, nutrition. He's like, dude, I got a job for you. I want you to come out to Onit for an interview. And I was like, I don't know, man, I got a good thing here. And everything worked out very quickly. You know, went out for the interview, hit it off, and there I was, like only a couple months later.
That's great. That's how, quite often the best shit happens when it happens without planning, stuff like that, when you kind of just end up somewhere like that. It seems like a good fit for you. Now, we don't need to talk too much about the UFC stuff, but what about street fights? I want to hear some of that. That's more interesting to me anyway.
Yeah.
Because I'm not a tough guy, and I think I've been in one fight in 10 years, and I'm just not that guy. So to me, that's fascinating. Street fighting's a whole different animal, I imagine. No rules.
Yeah, no rules.
Let's hear a couple highlights. Without how do you say it without sounding braggadocious?
No,
I imagine you have a winning record on the
street. I can say this confidently. I've never lost a fight on the street. And that's because I think I had a good gauge of when I was going to get my ass kicked. So it was fight or flight growing up. I grew up as skinny as a beanpole. I got picked on by a lot of older kids who thought I was in their grade. My mom dressed me till I was like 15 years old, so I looked like a fucking preppy. And I would often outrun, more times than not, people that were trying to kick my ass. But every now and then I get cornered and realize there's no way out. And I was able to come out on top. But the story I want to tell you, and I can go into a couple of stories if you want, are the brawls.
I would love that.
The brawls are the best.
I imagine a bar and alcohol involved somehow, or college.
Yeah.
A lot of testosterone, a lot of ego.
Yep. And college is a great place for that, you know. And thankfully, no one, to my knowledge, got hurt from it. But we were kind of stoned, and we wanted to get Whataburger.
Stoned on what now?
Weed.
Oh, really?
Weed
doesn't seem like a fighting.
No, not at all.
Right,
but I mean, we weren't looking for fights. None of us ever looked for fights.
Right.
Kind of just fell in our lap, like my job at Onit. And so we're waiting. You know, the drive-through line is so long at Whataburger in Tempe, and I had this shitty old '94 Dodge Colt hand me down from my old man. Stick shift, 4-cylinder straight line. So I'm there with two of my homies. And, we get through the drive-thru, we order all of our food, and the guy's like, dude, the line's so busy, would you mind parking, and then I'll run it out to you? And we're like, sure, no problem. So we pull over and we park, and probably 15 minutes goes by. And I'm like, shit, man. And I backed it in so I could pull out quick, and I kind of honked the horn, and there's a brick wall behind Whataburger, about 10 yards, and then a second brick wall. And then there's one of the dorms at ASU. And so on the third floor of one of the dorm rooms, that's closest to us, there's a bunch of 18-year-olds having a little party. And apparently they didn't like me honking. So we get a full beer can thrown at the car, and it lands right on the hood. And my car's a fucking beater. I don't care about it, you know? And I look at my buddy, and I'm like, what the fuck, dude? That was a full beer can. And my homie in the back seat, to be clear, all of us were down. I never had to worry if they were throwing punches or not, but I look over at the dude in the passenger seat whose window's down, and I'm like, if that was fucking 2 feet different, we'd be going to the hospital right now.
Yeah.
It's like, we got to go see who's through that.
Right.
And it was almost like Good Will Hunting, you know, like the two of us in the front were down, the guy in the back, he was kind of on the fence. I'm like, get the fuck out of the car. We're going after these guys. So we jump the first brick wall, run up to the next, jump the second brick wall, climb up 3 flights of stairs, and all these 18-year-olds are fucking panicked. And we're looking around, asking people, talking shit, who the fuck threw the beer can, all that kind of nonsense. And we see nobody's talking. And so we go inside and we trash this guy's dorm room. He had bunk beds, pulled it over, slammed it in the mirror. We're throwing full Coronas into the walls, just really destroyed the place, which is not something I'm entirely proud of, even though I'm smiling about the outcome of this. Right. And I didn't realize this, my boy who was closest to the beer can getting thrown at him, he grabs a laptop and hangs it over the edge of the 3rd story. And he goes, if nobody's going to talk, I'm going to fucking drop this laptop, which is everything this kid has in school, most likely. Right. No one says a peep. It's crickets. He goes, fine, and lets it go.
Wow.
And this thing goes 3 stories down and shatters. And I think my buddy spotted somebody going down the stairs while we were in there. So he was like, yo, we got to go. So we all run down. We jump the first floor, or the first brick wall, jump the second brick wall. And there's this guy who's got a flip phone, and he's on one knee taking a photo of my license plate. He's like, it's fucked up, man. You shouldn't have thrown my fucking laptop. It was the guy who owned the place, right?
Was a little bitch move, right?
Yeah. And so immediately I snatch the phone out of his hand and break it in half because it's his little flip phone.
Yes.
And he grabs me, he gets me in a bear hug. And I look at my boy and I was like, dude, get this guy off me. He takes a crow hop and buries him with one shot. Dude falls down right as our drive-through guy's walking out with all of our food in bags. He's like, hey, what's going on here? Other guy runs up, snatches the food out of his hand, yells, nothing. We jump in the car and we take off in the getaway car. And
they learned their lesson.
For a good week, I was scared as fuck that the cops were going to show up. And then I realized something. All those kids were 18. They were all drinking underage. No one could call the cops.
Right. And you were how old at this time?
22.
Okay. Yeah. So these were freshmen, you were a senior. And at this point, were you fighting already? You had been training?
I had trained a little bit, like 17, 18, just for fun in between wrestling and football season. But I wouldn't say I had a lot of experience street fighting. So it was nothing to us. Like, I was hoping these guys were going to say some shit.
Yeah, like give me a reason.
Light them up.
Yeah. I see. I have some guys in my circle that were the tough guys, but I was never the one. And I was always down, but I was never really confident in my fighting skills. I did a little JiuJitsu for a while, just for some self-defense, which I feel like 1 year of JiuJitsu helped me with my confidence a lot.
You had some good guys to train with too.
Yeah, Henner and Hedon, and Crone's my boy, and I'll get some little tips here and there. But I also realized I got to train in front of Helio once.
Wow.
Yeah, that was pretty special. So and this was like a metaphor for life. He came in and he sat down in a little fold-out chair in Torrance in front of Henner and Hedon as they would train their students in front of him, and he'd sit there and watch. And I remember what he said in Portuguese. They translated. There was like, okay, Simon knows the moves, but he needs to relax. And I'm like, the story of my fucking life. So you could apply that fighting stuff to. So I remember them telling me later when I'd be training, they'd say, just tell me what you did today as I'd be, putting a chokehold on them. They'd let me put the chokehold. They'd be like, just tell me what you did today. Oh, I went to and they're like, I can feel you relaxing as you're telling me this story. So that's your homework. Just fucking relax, like breathe into it. That's a metaphor for life for me.
No doubt. Yeah. No doubt. That applies everywhere.
Yeah. But I've only had to use it once, and it worked. I defended myself, and that shit works, and it was second nature. And hopefully I'll never have to do it again.
Was that in Australia?
That was in Australia, so I already told this story. I think I've told. Story. Yeah, it's a great story, and it felt good. And then it was honestly felt like I slept real good that night. Like I got it out of me. It was almost like therapeutic. You know what I mean? Sometimes I feel like you need to do that shit.
Yeah.
So much energy stored up inside. Sometimes it feels good to just let that shit out. Now I imagine no street fights. As you've been a professional fighter, you could get in a lot of trouble, right? Wouldn't it be a lethal?
There was still some shit. You know, it's funny about that, the lethal weapon stuff. I think they did that, with
true?
black belts and karate and then boxers.
Right.
I don't know that applied to MMA as a combat sport for whatever reason. I'm sure the judge would not look happily upon me.
Right.
But oddly enough, I bounced and bartended the whole time I was in the UFC because I was making shit for money, living in my mom's detached garage. And surprisingly, people would recognize me, and still, alcohol is a hell of a drug.
Right.
Like, people would fucking get chippy. They wouldn't leave or listen to me when I was trying to say, like, yo, the night's over, it's time to go, or take your hands off the girl's ass. It doesn't work that way because it was like a pseudo strip club. And so there was a fair amount of action there. I wouldn't call those fights because they were super lopsided, but I'd get into it.
Right.
You know?
How did you get into psychedelics? What was your first experience? Was it something that was later in life, or did you? Because you seem to be somebody who is advocate for it, and see, I hear you talk about it a lot. We've talked about it a lot. How did you? What was your introduction to psychedelics? And maybe we could talk a little bit about some of your experiences.
I'll tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah.
My first experience was. It was something where I was down. I mean, I've been offered it when I was in high school, but I didn't do a whole lot of drugs. My dad was like adamant about that. And then, of course, years later, find out they were all into all the drugs growing up.
Oh, what, your parents were?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
So you're like, your dad used to fucking snort coke all the time.
Yeah.
You know, that
was the 80s.
Yeah. Like, so I shied away. And then I think I want to say 17 or 18, and we go to this house party in Pleasanton. So East Bay, it's about a 45-minute hike for us. We get there. We're all supposed to spend the night. And it's my homie's birthday, the house that we're going to. And we get there, and I'd asked one of my buddies from my neck of the woods, because he was telling me, like, dude, this guy's got homegrown mushrooms, and they're fresh. Like, they're not even dried hydroponic mushrooms, and he's looking to get rid of them. And I was like, I'll take them. You know, so I had no idea what to take, how much to take, respect, reverence, intention, none of that shit. And I get a text saying, or a call rather, and he's like, yo, man, he couldn't come through tonight. You know, we'll just do other shit. And I was like, all right, cool. So I get there. I get fucking hammered drunk. Like, I would have puked from that no matter what. I get in the car and hotbox the car with like 3 of us and 1 blunt. And I smoked a lot, but that was still enough for me, plus the alcohol to really be spinning. Get back to the house party. And my boy shows up and he's like, dude, homeboy came through, and he shows me this fucking big ass bag of mushrooms. I had no idea what the strain was or any of that, or even how much it weighed, but they were wet. There was condensation in the bag. These were picked that night.
Does that make it more potent if there's still? Okay.
It does. And so, not knowing what to do with mushrooms, very first time taking them, I cut them up and threw them on a pizza. Baked the pizza and then ate the whole thing.
So you baked the mushrooms on the pizza. Did that lose any of the potency?
I'm sure it did.
Right.
I'm sure it did. He can take.
But you didn't know to
notch.
eat like half an eighth or something to start.
Yeah,
you probably ate a lot.
And I was
more.
already fucking on Queer Street.
Right.
I was fucked up. So I ate the whole fucking pizza, and there's a stripper there, of course, because it's my boy's birthday, and we're all acting like we're older than we are. I think we were under 18, and all my boys know what's up. And the only dude that eat the mushrooms, everybody's drinking, and at one point, the stripper looks over and she's like, where's the birthday boy? And all my homies point at me and they're like, Kingsbury. And I was like, all right, I guess I'm the birthday boy. And it's starting to kick in like really strong. And so she takes me to the middle of the room. She puts like an old president's mask, like in Point Break, over my face. I can't see shit.
So this sounds like either the best or the worst thing ever on mushrooms.
This is the fucking worst thing
ever. Right. You don't want all the attention on you.
This is a pure nightmare.
Yeah.
And there was other people there that I didn't know. It wasn't all my boys. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're in a fucking house party out in the middle of nowhere. There's no safety, security. And so once the mask goes on, it's a blur. But I remember her she spun me around to disorient me, pulled my pants down, shaved one ass cheek with a razor, and then beat my face with a dildo. And then took the mask off.
What president, so I can paint the picture?
I think it was Kennedy.
Jesus.
Something like that. And so I get the fucking mask off, and I was looking around the room, like everything's like, it's full blown psychedelic experience. The walls are moving, my friends are laughing, and they look like demons, like alligators, like ha 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 ha, and their fucking teeth are like huge giant triangles. And I was like, fuck. And I just started crying, and I run out of the room and projectile vomit for like a good hour in the rain. One of my buddies comes out and he's like, nobody has any experience with this. You know, like, we're all kids. And he's just like, dude, I don't know what to do. Should we call an ambulance? And I'm like, no, don't call a fucking ambulance. I'll get in trouble. I'm like, let me just ride this out. I'll be fine. I keep puking. And then they put me in a room to lay down and go to sleep. And I felt, until the mushrooms wore off, for like a good 5 more hours, like I was going to be swallowed by the bed and suffocated.
Jeez, this sounds
It didn't
awful.
matter which way I turned. And then finally I surrendered to it and I was able to fall asleep.
And I'm sure that was a big lesson.
That was a big lesson.
Yeah.
And I didn't know it at the time.
Right.
Looking back, that was like, that's the medicine, right? And so that was my bad and ugly experience. Years later, thankfully, I had a positive mushroom experience in Arizona. We were out in Sedona, and it was just the homies.
Sedona's a great place, by the way. Great backdrop for
amazing.
psychedelics.
And no intention there, but it was beautiful. It was one of my first like real spiritual experiences.
Daytime? I'm a fan of daytime mushrooms.
It was
in
daytime.
nature.
We went in Slide Rock. I was looking at water bugs and shit, and I was just like, oh man, like I just felt connected to everything.
You want to be in nature. Yeah.
And then when I started fighting, I had a boxing coach who was Native American and Mexican, and he would take me out to a Native American reservation and really introduced me to using mushrooms in like a traditional sense with respect and reverence for the plants and setting an intention and prayer. And we would use them in the sweat lodge. So he'd run like a Lakota style sweat. Now it's not traditional for the Lakota to use medicine in the sweat. The sweat is medicine in itself, but he would combine the two practices. And so you'd have to go through this challenge for about 45 minutes to an hour. You get out and the mushrooms were full force. And this Native American reservation is beautiful. It's completely untouched land. There's no running water, no bathrooms, no lights, no casinos, obviously. Like it's just untouched land and it's in a canyon. So I really started to work with the medicine there. And then from there got into ayahuasca and other things that have been, it's hard to order them. They all have a seat at the table, but very transformative experiences among those.
I bought a book after you recommended it, the Psychedelic
Explorer's Guide by Dr. Jim Fadiman.
So I got the audiobook, haven't listened yet, but it's in my queue because you told me that was a very important book when we did the podcast last time. So I got that one in my queue. I'm anxious to get into that one. Sweat lodge is something I've always wanted to try. I haven't done that one yet. I suffer from a glandular. I don't know if it's some type of. I sweat very easily. Like I'll go to yoga and I'm dripping sweat before everyone else. I went to a doctor to ask why. I thought I was dying or something. He's like, no, you're just wired that way. It's actually a good thing. That
is a good thing.
Yeah, she's like, just drink a lot of water and get some electrolytes in you. You know, some lemon and some sea salt, whatever.
You do very good in a sweat, though.
I would.
Yeah. You just add some salt to your water before you go in. Make sure you're well hydrated, and then when you're in, you're good. And if some people run a tight ship, you're not allowed out in between rounds. But a lot of people that work with gringos, they'll let you out in between rounds. You can hydrate up and get back in for the next round.
I would want to try that first without psychedelics, and then maybe work my way up to doing that, because that almost sounds like, I don't know if I'm claustrophobic, but is a sweat lodge a tight, small, little kind of tented? Like, what exactly is a sweat lodge?
They can be very tight.
That scares me.
Like the traditional ones are pretty, Temazcal or in an ipi, you can squeeze 20 people in with 2 rows, but I mean,
you're shoulder to shoulder,
you're leaning on everybody, you're sweating on each other. There's no private space at all.
Wow.
If you go with a smaller group, I've been in places where I could lay down if I needed to.
Right.
There's a little extra room, so we could put something together for you to have that sweat in Sedona.
Yeah, I would love that. And you guys go to Sedona a lot, don't you? You guys go there, and since we've met, I think you've gone there a couple of times, and I've seen you guys on social media.
Go there like 2 or 3 or 4 times a year.
Yeah, that place is special. It's a vortex there of sorts. I think there's a few places I've been to. Lake Tahoe feels like one. There's places, Bali, Hawaii, where you feel some type of energy field. Yeah, Mount Shasta. There actually technically really is some, and then some places that feel some type of magic energy. But Sedona's definitely something's going on. Those I guess the peak of those hikes that you can do on those elevated rocks, you can almost hear a humming there. That place is magic.
There is a buzz.
Yeah, there's something going on there
for sure.
Yeah.
It's very hard for me to sleep. Some people sleep great there, but I might get 4 or 5 hours, and I normally sleep very well. So like 4 or 5 hours there, and I'm just like, all right, man, that's it.
Right.
And
okay, let's talk about sleep a little bit. I stopped drinking coffee recently, and I sleep 2 hours more a night. So my whole life's better because I stopped drinking coffee, and I'm not grinding my teeth at 10 p.m. trying to sleep. You as a fighter, I imagine sleep to rest and heal and restore. There's all these things. Chris Ryan wants to write a book. Maybe I shouldn't leak this, but I don't think he'd care. He wants to do a book called something like Minimum Steps to Optimal Health, and how people overwork out in America, especially. We're a very driven culture. Kill it, wake up at 5, go work out before work. And his argument is that extra hour or 2 of sleep will do you better in the long run than waking up early and pushing it too hard. Do you agree with that?
I agree with that. And I think that just comes from, there's a lot of culture that comes from go, whether that's in business or anything else. And you see guys like, and I love them both. They're inspirational, but David Goggins and Jocko Willink come to mind, who are, Jocko being, happy to sleep less and up at 4:30.
Oh yeah, he's an animal.
Got to watch, right?
Yeah,
and Goggins does some shit. I mean, it's hard for people to keep up. It's inspirational, and I like because there is a large percentage of the population that ain't doing shit.
Right.
And then there's also still a large percentage of the population that's doing too much.
Right.
So Paul Chek, who you're going to interview soon, is a good friend of mine and one of my mentors. He talks about the practice of working in versus working out. Working out is energy expending. That would be anything where you're sweating, you're breathing heavy, that kind of thing. It's taxing the body. And ultimately good, right? These acute stressors are still good for us, but done too much, it's chronic. On the flip side of that coin, you have working in. Those are like meditation practices, breath work, maybe cold tub, sauna, those kind of things. Even though you're in the sauna, you can still stay pretty parasympathetic where you're resting in the sauna and sweating and detoxing, and that has a lot of benefit too. But bottom line is we need balance, and that's the balance, right? It's not balance. It doesn't mean you don't do shit all day. Balance means you push to those extremes and you find your outer edges, but it happens in both departments. Like work hard, rest hard is a real thing, right?
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean sitting on my ass on an off day. It means like an active recovery where maybe I walk, I jump in the sauna, have a little meditation of various sorts, and that's kind of how I do find balance.
Yeah, I think balance is, obviously it's a cliche thing, but it's really true. If you're not, balanced in one area, you working out too much could actually probably be at a fault to a certain degree, I'd imagine. Someone's just doing weights, and they're not sleeping enough and they're just eating like shit. Everything's got to be a certain balance. And I think everybody's different. Some people being a raw vegan works for them. I know it doesn't work for me, and I don't know. That's obviously a hot topic and a big debate. I know people who have been vegan and stopped after years, and they're like, "Dude, I was dying." When my mom was pregnant, she was a vegetarian, and the doctor said, "You need to start eating meat for the development of your son's brain." Obviously, it didn't work, but that's what she was told.
She didn't start till late in the third trimester.
Right. And that was in the 70s. So. I like Paul Chek's theory, which is, look, on a day where you're not exerting any energy, just eat some greens, have some vegetables, eat a salad if you're sitting on a plane all day or you're just sitting at a desk.
Heavy.
Yeah, you don't need
a shit ton of carbs and starches.
Yeah. And on a day you're maybe working out, have some protein and mix it up. And I like another thing he said, which is to surprise your body with one day eat some wild salmon, next day eat some grass-fed beef, reverse the plate instead of a big steak like we do here in America with a little side salad. He's like, get a big salad and a tiny little petite grass-fed like that makes sense to me of all the things I've heard more than anything. And I don't know if that's even just specific to me, but that seems to make sense for everyone. And a buddy of mine, Troy Casey, who Paul Chek's one of his mentors, was also saying, and maybe you could shed some light on this, is that, when you live, depending on where you live is also something for your diet. Like if you live in an urban environment like this, you need to have certain proteins because there's so many fucking toxins and things you need to fight against. I do hot yoga a lot, maybe every other day. That's sort of my latest jam is the hot yoga because I'm just sweating out all the fucking pollutants that are in LA, from the air to the food, to everything. Do you think hot yoga is a stressor? Because sometimes I feel like I'm pushing it too hard, and I just do the 45-minute class. It's about 100 degrees. What do you think about hot yoga?
Oh, I think it's great. And again, like that would fall in the category of like a good hormetic stressor that's going to challenge the body.
Hormetic stressor? What does that mean? Yeah.
So you think of something that might be taxing and bring you down a notch, like weightlifting. And then if you give enough rest to it, you respond positively. There are foods that apply to this. There's a number of things that apply to this. The cold, like if you stay in a cold tub for too long, you die. But if you get in for a certain amount of time and you get out, the body responds by increasing all sorts of neurochemicals and various things. And Wim Hof's into all that, the science behind that I'm discussing. But the point is, like, you can do something that will challenge you in the interim, acute stress, and lead to benefit, right? And that's one of those. If you were hitting it 2 or 3 days a week, it's probably not an issue. If you're hitting it 2-3 days a week, and you're doing a lot of other shit, you're not sleeping well. I think a place that sums this up well is Robert Sapolsky's book, Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. And
I'm going to have to write this down. Remind me of that.
Also a concept we've been talking about Paul a lot. One of the books that changed my life is How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy by Paul Chek. And in that, he shows these funnels and these funny little artwork of how we funnel in all these different forms of stress. And once they get to the body, it's an accumulation of that stress that becomes the issue. So if you consistently have stress from your relationship or consistently have stress from work, that bleeds into everything, your sleep, your fucking workouts, all that shit. So if I have a rough day at the office, going in and having a max effort deadlift day is probably not the recipe to keep me whole and leave me better than when I started. Right. That's where you start to get injured and run into shit. And I'm not just saying like, you know, all the verbal arguments will make me get injured doing deadlift. That's not what I'm trying to say. But if you overdo any of these things and you don't have some way to balance that and look positively through the lens of what we live in, you're gonna run into some issues. And I think both those books illustrate that very well.
I'm gonna have to remind me of those later. I have the memory of a pigeon. I smoked a lot of weed in my life. Stress is. Tell me how you feel about this. Stress is the underlying core issue to so many people's problems, from my understanding. And that's me speaking on my personal experience. I know when I'm stressed, it affects everything. I moved to the beach recently. I got a little apart. I had right up the street here, I had a big 3-bedroom house in the hills, but I was living in sort of the Hollywood matrix, and it's a stressful environment. Anytime you go down the hill, you're traffic, people are laying on the horn. It just feels more tense. And I'm hypersensitive, so I am affected by my surroundings, people's energy, everything, and it's a fucking gnarly energy here. But you go out to the beach, and that is decreased dramatically. The ocean, the color blue, the saltwater air, the walking barefoot in the sand, all these things have contributed to my stress level going from here to here, but I don't have a bigger house. I've never worked less, but never been less stressed. And I don't want to say happier because it's a weird thing when people say, are you happy? Like, how do you answer that? Like, ask me in 5 minutes. I might be happy later. Like, it's such a blanket statement. But being at the beach for me has fucking taken my stress level, dude, down to here.
Yeah, and it ups your quality of life.
By a million.
We just interviewed Wallace J. Nichols, who's a good buddy of Chris.
Who's that?
And Kyle Tierman. He wrote the book Blue Mind. And it's awesome. It's all on how water, even just seeing it, can affect us in a positive way, right? And then, of course, getting in it has a lot of different changes to our neurology, as well as, looking at the negative ions that come off the ocean and how that helps to balance we're electrical beings. And Paul gets into that too in his book. But there's no doubt. And you don't have to just be by the ocean. A lot of people gave Wallace a bunch of shit like, well, where's my beach? I live in fucking Kansas. And it's like, no, any body of water. And even if it's your fucking bathtub, it can be beneficial. But being immersive in those things, it is clearing, even from an energetic standpoint, which sounds woo-woo. There's a lot of stuff there. We did a flower bath. We were just in Costa Rica doing ayahuasca, my wife and a few other close friends. And one of the ways they clear, instead of the smudge, which is typically Northern Native American, the indigenous in South America will do like a flower bath where it's it's almost like fucking potpourri. It smells so good. And they just coat your entire body in this potpourri water. And that is a clearing thing before you go into the medicine experience.
Yeah, I've yet to do ayahuasca. It's feeling like it's calling me. How do you feel about that? Another woo-woo statement, which, I go into a lot of things pessimistic or realistic and come out often surprised at how wrong I am. Everything's energy, everything's vibrations. My dad's a breathwork coach, so I think I sort of had this weird reservation because I was around it my whole life. I'm like, whatever. And then as I got older, I found it myself. And I believe in that shit. I don't even think there's any woo-woo to the cold or the breathwork. But there's some things like, for instance, I tried Reiki. Is that how you pronounce it? Reiki healing. And I went in there like, this is bullshit. I want to get a massage. I don't want someone to like move energy around. And I was completely wrong. This guy, I just laid on the table and he just did whatever he did and he just moved stuff around. I felt like I had a paperweight on my chest for a couple of years. Like I physically couldn't even breathe in all the way, right? And I walked out of there and it felt like something just opened, like my let's just, again, sounds woo-woo, my heart chakra felt like it just popped open and all this energy started flowing through and I walked out of there like a believer and I went in there a non-believer.
I think to be clear, there are white belts and black belts and everyone in between teaching Reiki and teaching, giving ayahuasca ceremonies and all these things. And really finding somebody that works, there's no doubt it works. I've had people who did Reiki on me and I was like, oh, okay, thank you very much. I didn't feel shit. And I've other times where I had Reiki and I was like, my fucking mood was different for the week.
Right.
And same can be said for ayahuasca. I've been in ceremonies where they played music on an iPod, and then I've been down in the Amazon where they sing Icaros and play music, and it's a fucking completely different experience.
Did I tell you about my mushroom masseuse lady?
Yes.
Okay.
I want her so bad.
Okay, I can hook you up with her.
Me?
I don't think I've talked about it on this pod, so I'll reiterate for those people that I didn't. This was pretty awesome. So I was at a health food store here in LA, and I overhear this guy talking about this mushroom masseuse, and those two words together just drew me in. So I got her phone number, called her up. She proceeded to give me a 4-hour massage and brought the mushrooms and gave them to me and gave me some of the most incredible healing work I've ever had done in my life, because she talks to you while she's doing the work, and she eats the mushrooms with you and finds like blocked energy inside, and will find something and be like, oh, what's this? And you're tripping. And it was the most, on the physical level, it was amazing, because there's something about doing the mushrooms that kind of, you're aware of your breath more and you loosen up. But also being with this woman you don't even know, and tripping is kind of weird to trip with someone you don't know, and she's kind of calling you on your shit and finding all this stuff. And it was some deep work, man. And I'm always trying to find some new shit to try to, better myself, whatever. And that one was extremely effective. And I remember she said to me, she busted out a bag of mushrooms, and I ate like a cap and a stem, and I'm laying on the table, and she kneels down face level to me, and she said, "What are you afraid of?" I was like, oh shit. That's a layered statement. And she's like, eat more. I was like, my ego got in the way, and I ate more, and it was fucking gnarly. And yeah, that's not a common thing that I think exists out there. So I recommend it. I don't recommend people listening to go out and just try it with anyone, but this woman knew what she was doing.
Yeah.
What are some other maybe experiences you could share with us along the lines of an ayahuasca retreat, or maybe Rhythmia? Have you been to Rhythmia?
I have not been to Rhythmia yet. I've heard great things.
Yeah.
Our friend Luke Story. Have you met Luke?
No, but he was on your pod. Yeah.
He's amazing. He
just did it.
He just did it his second time. He's a great dude. But he went to Rhythmia and had a beautiful experience. He shared on my show, the Kyle Kingsbury podcast, fairly recently. And then we went to Soltara, which is also in Costa Rica. And the thing I like about Soltara, and this is no knock against anywhere else that has more, but they cap their limit to 20 people.
Okay.
And one of the things that you have to deal with in ayahuasca is that, like your experience with the mushroom masseuse, it's just you and her. And if she's good, she's going to guide it. It's a very controlled setting. You're very safe, and you don't have to deal with other people's shit. In ayahuasca, it's not my ceremony, it's our ceremony, right?
With strangers usually? What's this environment like?
Yeah,
often?
I think our good friend Aubrey Marcus, he'll do a lot of, he might book the entire group.
Well,
so if
that
there's
seems
20, then
that's
a similar way you can control it. And that's totally possible. Like, we could set something up like that for your first ceremony.
I would prefer that to do in a group setting, because I remember Natasha said something like one time in one of her experiences, there was some creepy guy looking at her and it affected her whole,
It fucked her up for sure.
I don't want my ego to get in the way, or me possibly being, is that the guy from Scary Movie? Is that dirt? That'll fuck my whole shit up.
Yeah.
So I don't want that experience to cross over into any type of, that'll throw me off.
I agree with you on that. And that said, there has been some challenging experiences where other people were freaking out or whatever, right next to me. And one of the things that I've continued to learn through ayahuasca is this connectedness that we all have. And this is taught in ancient spiritual texts, everything from Indra's web of jewels, in Hindu texts, where it looks like a spider's web, and each thing connecting is like a piece of consciousness. To viscerally experience that is a different thing. And that's the whole thing. When we talk about these things that seem a little far out, you can't really understand it until you do it. And that's Graham Hancock's argument. He's been on Rogan a number of times. He was just there. It was like, scientists, atheists like Richard Dawkins will say, like, listen, this is just a chemical reaction happening in your brain. And Graham Hancock appropriately puts it as, you don't have a seat at the fucking table to tell me what this experience is until you do it.
Right.
So I think that's an important piece. But in this, like, that feeling of connectedness and together really helps me to subside this guy's fucking up my experience, because it is our experience. And if I look through that lens, I can tolerate that. And so much, like, we talk about how when you can accept discomfort, like a cold bath, and work your way through that and cover your breath work and manage to stay calm in the fucking storm, that has an impact on every part of your life.
Absolutely.
There's no doubt about it, right? So same thing in a situation like this, like, we don't control what the fuck other people do, what they say, how they act, how they behave. Did they follow dieta? They're purging a lot. You're not supposed to talk.
What's dieta, real quick? I'm sorry. What does dieta mean?
It's a way you prep before, during, and after.
Fasting or whatever.
Different types of food. I mean, you fast from select foods.
Dieta?
Yeah.
Like diet?
Diet.
Okay.
Yeah, the diet. The Shipibo diet, or in different cultures have different ways to do dieta. Easy to Google, and you'll find a wide variety of what dieta is. But bottom line is, it's this ability to kind of cleanse yourself before you go in, during, and after. And so, you find a lot of people, and I've seen people eating fucking potato chips the day before ceremony, and then of course they're the first persons to let it out. Right. Now that's not to say that that's why you purge each time. That can be a number of different reasons for that to happen. And I'm kind of all over the place here on Aya, but the point I'm trying to make is that there's a lot of benefit to being with people you don't know. And there was a lot of first timers at Soltara when we were there, and to see we did 4 ceremonies in about 5 nights, and we were all there for 8 days, to see the arc of people's transformation and what they were getting, and it's visceral. I mean, I can't recall talking to anybody one-on-one about their experience. We'd have a couple group shares where people would talk about what they were going through, but you can feel the difference in them by the fucking end of the week. And that's really cool to be a part of, because then you're like, oh shit, we all came here for our own reasons, and we're all leaving better people because largely that we were willing to do the work. And Soltara is an amazing place. I mean, they have great Shipibo shaman that they fly in, great facilitators that have also been apprenticing with the medicine for a long time. They're 3-hour orientation, and to be clear, this is my 23rd through 26th ceremony, so not a ton, but more than most people. Yeah. And I was still learning a shit ton. Yeah. We had the 3-hour orientation, and I was like, holy shit, I didn't know that. And there was many other points that were made that I was like, dude, if I knew that my first ceremony, that would have made everything else better. It made all my work with ayahuasca last a little bit more. I'd retain a little bit more, and I'd know how to integrate, which is a huge part of the process, because none of this shit fixes you. It's up to you to do the work. And when you get back to the real world, air quotes, that's when the work starts, right? So being able to take whatever downloads you get, which are highly personal, and then apply that to your life to change for the better, that's why you keep going.
Right. Yeah. And I don't know if you saw this movie called The Last Shaman. Have you seen this?
No.
Okay. It's on Netflix. You might dig it. It's about this guy who suffers from some type of depression of sorts. And ironically, his dad is a psychologist. And he tries everything. And then he goes against his family's, they did not want him to go. He went down to find a shaman and do ayahuasca. But in the process, he ran into a bunch of bullshit, fake, trying to take advantage of the white guy coming down to find himself, bullshit. Mm-hmm. And the movie exposes that there's a lot of that down there. Like, you just go down to Peru, and there's maybe not the best medicine men who have your best interests. So that could be a pretty scary situation. I would really want to at least be, and look, and this is another thing. This isn't for everyone. Like, I don't think everyone should do psychedelics. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not just because it worked for me in certain areas doesn't mean that, oh, you need to go do this or everyone's got their own shit. And it's almost like if it calls you, do it. Yeah. But I would be pretty scared to go down and have some bullshit fake shaman. That could fuck you up, man.
Yeah. Well, you touched on a couple of important pieces there. One, you want to go a place that's been highly recommended by a close friend or people you trust. Like, maybe people trust me. I can say I've been to Spirit Quest in the Amazon in Iquitos, Peru.
What's Spirit Quest?
Spirit Quest is Don Howard's old place. They used to do Huachuma there, ceremonies in ayahuasca with Don Robert. It's a beautiful place. Soltara, fucking amazing place. The arguably the best I've ever been a part of, and very potent medicine. And most importantly, perhaps, their level of what they do to help with integration, and their information and education that they give you while you're there about how to work with the medicine is bar none the best I've ever had. So really, I mean, like, it doesn't mean like that's your only show in town you can go. If other people have talked well about Rhythmia or different places like that, those are the places to explore, places that have been vetted. And
there's not too many of these places where it's a controlled environment where you can go and have. One other question: is it? Because I know a buddy of mine just went in Oakland to do ayahuasca, and he did it once. And I don't think he had the same effect as some, and I don't want to seem like you need to go to the environment necessarily to do it and have it the right effect. But from what I understand, and again, I don't know, is that it's best to do it like 3 times within a week or 4. Isn't that real process?
You want multiple ceremonies.
How does that work?
I've been able to do I won't give away details, but I was in Vegas. We did 3 nights, a couple of different times.
In Las Vegas.
And they flew in the Shipibo Shaman. And obviously Vegas has its own buzz. It's
yeah,
not a positive
I don't like
one.
that
It's
vibe
like
there.
New York buzz.
Yeah.
But these were some of the best ceremonies I've ever had.
Wow, interesting.
And the issue with being stateside, because a lot of people will say, oh, I heard it's going down in my city, and fucking odds are it is, right? So you reach out, you felt the calling, you find out a place to go to. And the issue, even if it is 3 nights in a row or every other night for a week, is the fact that you have no ability to unplug while you're here. There's no challenge getting there.
Right.
And one of the beautiful things about getting all the way to the fucking Amazon or getting all the way to Costa Rica, I mean, it's a much shorter flight, but we flew to Houston to San Jose, Costa Rica, spent the night in a hotel. The next day we were picked up, we were shuttled 2 hours, we were on a ferry for another 2 hours, and then we got driven to the complex. And it's like, it takes fucking work to get there. You're not on your phone checking the gram. Like, you are unplugged because you're forced. Now, they had Wi-Fi at Soltara, and so if you wanted to do that, you could. Right. Obviously, they encouraged us not to.
Yeah, that pulls you right out of it.
But you also have time before and in between each ceremony while you're there. So yeah, it's a little bit more expensive than going stateside. It's because you're basically paying for your room, all your organic food, and the medicine. You're paying for your flights, those kind of things. And realistically, you got to take like 10 days off work to make that happen.
Right.
But having 2 days before the ceremony start and 2 days after to really reflect, and a day off in between, like it's massive. Like, and you don't really understand that until you go through it. And I've done both sides of the coin. I've had probably, I'd say the majority of my ceremonies have been in closer context, you know, whereas, you know, having that space when I was at Soltara or in Peru, it makes all the difference in the world, because you really want to have time to integrate. There's been times where I've done ayahuasca and gone back to work the next day, and that shit doesn't stick.
Right.
It really doesn't. It's very hard to take and integrate and give yourself space for that. And so, you know, to your point, that when you brought up the thing about, damn it, I'm drawing a blank here. It's, there was a point before about it's not for everyone. It's not for everyone, right? So to that note, there are, in my opinion, and it's just that, in my opinion, you're right. It's not for everyone. It's not up to me to decide that for people, right? It's up to you to decide that. I think there are prerequisites to do the deep work, whether that's the Terrence McKenna 5 grams and up dose with psilocybin, the heroic dose, or whether that's ayahuasca.
Is heroic dose 5 grams?
Yeah, and above.
And does it depend what kind of psilocybin? Because you could do 5 grams of a weak strain.
5 grams of the weak strain is still considered a heroic dose.
Okay.
5 grams of penis envy, which is the strongest mushroom. I've done that a couple of times. That's a whole different animal.
Yeah.
But point is, it's 5 grams and up. You call that heroic. And there are prerequisites to get there. And that's why I think that book that I recommended, The Psychedelic Explorer's Guide by Jim Fadiman, is so valuable, because it shows you how to go into the shallow end. It also shows you, when you're ready, how to set up a guide or a babysitter, somebody to watch over you at least, who has experience with the medicine, to make sure that you have a decent ceremony. It's not going to be the same as having a black belt coach you, but at least then you can start to work with maybe the middle levels before you go all the way in, right? And I think that those starting places are good. There's plenty of people listening to this that'll never fucking touch plant medicine, and that's totally cool. There's still a need for us to get centered. There's still a need for us to get quiet. There's still a need for us to quiet the monkey mind and sort our shit. And I think a lot can be accomplished in a float tank. Also, that pairs beautifully with fucking LSD or ketamine or ketamine. So
really interesting. Ketamine. I know your buddy Joe does edibles and it goes in there a lot.
Yep. Yeah, he's
because that could be a psychedelic.
I'm not a huge fan of cannabis these days.
Me neither. It doesn't work for me anymore.
But I think, you know, so much can be accomplished in a float. I probably float more often sober than I do with even a microdose. But microdose and float is just it's a whole different thing.
Have you done the Lucid Light yet? You know what that is? The Lucid Light. It's the light therapy.
Yeah, I'd seen that at PaleoFX like 2 years ago, but I didn't see him there last year.
It's cool. I just did it a couple times. There's one in Laguna, a place called, I can't remember, it's a float place in Laguna Beach, and they have the Lucid Light. There's like a high-end one. There's like there's only a few of them, even in the States. I think it was a doctor in somewhere in Belgium or something like that, had a near-death experience, and it was a psychedelic experience, and he wanted to simulate that without having to take drugs. So he made this light that has 50 settings. One's called LSD, one's called DMT, and you close your eyes and you see colors that don't exist. You see all these amazing patterns. It's very visual, but it's also a forced meditation, and I can't recommend it enough. I think you'd really dig it. It's hard to find, but if you ever come across a Lucid Light, which exists at a lot of float places, get in there and try it. And I talked to the guy on the phone for about an hour, and I was asking him all these questions, and I was like, well, what if I was to do some psychedelics and do the Lucid Light? He's like, why don't you just do it by itself first? Which is kind of like what you're talking about before. Also, when you're talking about going down to a place and having the experience not on stateside, it almost becomes like some Joseph Campbell hero's journey shit. You know, you go and have the experience and bring something back. Does that make sense? Does it feel more like a journey?
100%.
As opposed to just doing it in your backyard and then getting, like you said, back to your bed, your phone, your world. You don't really have any time to process and download all that shit that's going to happen. That feels more like the experience I'd want to have, is to go have that hero's journey and come bring something back. And yeah, that feels right.
Yeah, give a little space for it, right?
Yeah.
And that's it. You know, whether you do the plant medicines or not, create space in your life, create space for me time. I mean, even among relationships, I think I got this from the book Conscious Loving by Gay Hendricks and Kathleen Hendricks, their husband and wife. And they say, you know, the good relationships are going to happen with some degree of closeness and some degree of separation. And that goes for everyone in the family. So children need time by themselves to play, to use their imagination, to see things, to not be told what to do, to not be told how to play. And couples need that too. You know, couples need time apart to really appreciate the time they have together.
Absolutely.
And when there's a clinginess or, you know, people fight about work trips or things like that, obviously you can be away from home too long. And that's been something that I've dealt with in the past. But really it comes down to creating space in the relationships. And when you create space, not only, you know, we have a son now who's 4 years old. We need couples time where we have space away as just a couple, not as parents, right? And then individually, we need space from everyone, right? And that space could be in a float tank. It could be for a solo walk where you don't have to talk to anybody. You're not on your phone and you're just taking in nature. You're taking in the fucking sound of cars and the smells of exhaust, like whatever that is for you, that's important. And I think creating that space makes a big difference. You create space in the front end and the back end of ceremonies, it pays dividends. You create space on a daily basis to have some sort of quiet time, some sort of reflection time. And it doesn't mean I need to have quiet mind necessarily. I can use a walk to contemplate shit. And if I use that time wisely, when I go to bed at night, I won't have to think through the day because I've already given space for that. And that helps me fall asleep a little bit better.
Do you find your intuition, okay, because I was a big pothead for a long time and I'm off the weed now, and I have incredible psychic things happen that are just so bizarre. Like really, like my intuition is so on, like the little things that don't really matter that I notice. For instance, the other day, me and my buddies were watching the game. We ordered a pizza and I bounced up off the couch and I walked outside because I knew that she was driving in the driveway. And my friend's like, where are you going? I'm like, she's pulling in right now. And they're like, how the fuck did you know that? Little things like that are really strange. From my dreams being very psychic to my intuition in the real world to whatever is going on when you go, off the weed alone, just the dream world you go into because you probably have the dreams when you're smoking weed, you just don't remember them. I have a lot of work. I'm writing down my dreams now on some like Freudian, Carl Jung, analyze your subconscious. What does this shit mean? And I'll just sit there and another thing I'm trying to do is leave my phone. I got a digital alarm clock so I don't have to look at my phone to see what time it is in the morning and get sucked into the vortex. Leave my phone out of the room, alarm clock, wake up, sit there, process my dreams, try to understand what, and I don't, and then maybe later there was a lot of snakes in my dream. What does that mean? Look it up, figure shit out. But off the weed, it's amazing. The cloud has been lifted and I have all these very strange intuitive things happening. Does that make sense? Do you ever have that experience? Is your intuition, because it almost feels like it comes and goes in waves. Like there'll be times where I'm like, maybe I should play the lottery because I'm fucking on it right now. And then times where I'm not. You know what I mean?
Make all the bets right now.
Right. No, but it comes in, it's weird. It comes in waves for me where shit's just lined up.
Yeah, I think when you give yourself space to process stuff, and look, cannabis is a beautiful medicine. There's a lot of, and I say that not loosely, I mean that. It's not just a plant medicine. It's a fucking amazing plant medicine. It can be used for a lot of things. If you lean on that as a crutch
That's what I did.
To really, and so did I. Especially when I was 19. I'd wake and bake with a 4-foot bong. Dude. At noon. I'd fucking get my roommate up, who was still sleeping, because somebody had to light the 4-foot bong. I couldn't reach it. He'd light it. He'd go back to bed for another hour or two. Then I'd play Madden all fucking day. We'd eat Freschettas, pizza, all this shit. But you're not accomplishing much there. If you're using it for pain, or for maybe you really can't sleep and it's your anti-anxiety medicine.
Right.
Maybe you're using just CBD. All those things are positive, right? But if you're leaning on it heavily, you start to give away your awareness, and you're using it no different than alcohol. Even though it doesn't have it's not bad for you. It's not going to hurt you from a physiological standpoint the way alcohol does. You give away your power, basically, because you give it all to the plant. And you ask the plant to just fucking quiet the mind and let me go numb for a little bit. And there's a difference between that and a difference between really accepting what is and working through the things. Like there's... My good friend Parangi talks about this in the Lakota tradition, and maybe in many Native American traditions, this buffalo medicine. So each spirit animal is representative of something, and whether you're into spirit animals or not, it's pretty easy to see what this represents. But they talk about the buffalo medicine is when a storm comes, and this is exactly what happens in nature, they don't try to outrun the storm. They get shoulder to shoulder with their pack, and they go fucking head first through the storm because they know that's the fastest way to get through it. And that's the buffalo medicine.
Wow, interesting.
Right? So when you see your challenge, whatever the thing is you're avoiding, whatever you're procrastinating on, whatever you fear, take the fucking deep dive through that. And that's the fastest way out of it, is to pay attention to what's going on, not to get out of it. And even if you're using meditation to quiet your mind, like, oh, I'm so anxious. I'm like, maybe you don't need that. Maybe you need to blow off some steam and really focus on the thing you're bothered by. And when you've achieved some level of, all right, I think I've worked this out as good as I can, maybe there's less to think about now. Now I can meditate and really just drop in and feel that deep inner stillness again. Yeah,
you talked about this. One thing also, if you ever, not that you need to do this anymore, but I had the same bong problem. I would light a candle and rotate the bowl to the candle if no one could light it for me.
Super smart.
Or you could put a match between your toes. There's ways around. But the weed became something that was lowering my vibration. I was just kind of not operating on a higher frequency, and it was just I just noticed like I was just numb to everything, and I just be in this selfish sort of bubble of like, I remember once even my friend's wife said, it's like Simon's looking right through me. There was no connection, and I was becoming too numb, and it was having a reverse effect on me to where it was what everyone always said to me was, oh, I can't smoke weed. Like non-stoners would say, oh, it makes me kind of insecure and paranoid and doubt myself. It just totally flipped on me, and I tried all these different strains, and the weed just simply stopped working for me. And I asked a doctor about it, and he said that's pretty normal for men or women probably in their mid-30s for it to have a adverse effect on your brain. So, and I miss my best friend. Weed was like my staple thing. So now I'm embracing the no weed. But you said on Rogan that spaced out, it can be used probably more beneficially than just smoking all day. Is that correct? Like maybe you just smoke once in a while, you can use it.
He brought that up, that Terrence McKenna, who's considered one of the greatest, most intelligent psychonauts of all time and psychedelic explorers, he said that generally, if you're going to use cannabis, it's not to lean on it on a daily basis. It's to have the maximal amount of dose, but intermittently. So eat as much edibles as you can, or smoke as much as you can, but don't do it very often. Like treat it like a ceremony. Like I'm not fucking doing ayahuasca again, probably this year. And if I do, it'll be at the end of the year. I'd like at least 6 months. There was a time in my life where I do it a bit more often, like quarterly, those kind of things, and still get benefit, but you create the space for that, right? So that's what he's applying to cannabis. And I think that it could be powerful in that. That said, I'm 37, and what you're saying, what the doctor told you really resonates with me, because now even the tiniest bit, I'm messed up, and I'm constantly questioning myself and in my own head. And it's like, look, my monkey mind's strong enough. I don't need to fucking
That's what
increase
I'm saying.
that power.
It accelerates it. It doesn't calm it down.
Yeah.
And I think Terrence McKenna said, I watched so many, videos online. I can't remember who said what. I think he said that he would always roll a joint, and when he would be tripping, there was a time, whether it was on mushrooms or LSD, where he had that joint ready, and that would really kick in his trip. And I believe that too. Like if you're taking some mushrooms, have a joint rolled up, that can really help accelerate your journey. It can be used that way.
I think it applies to a lot of people. And Dan Hardy was a good friend of mine. He fought in the UFC, really talented guy. He's done ayahuasca a ton of times, and he was with me at my first ceremony. He mentioned the same thing, and then he had gotten that from Terrence, and it's true for him and a lot of other people I know. For me, cannabis is fucking super possessive. So if I'm on mushrooms or LSD, whether I'm peaking or coming out of it, whatever psychedelic I'm on, it's gone. It's the Cannabis show, and that's all I'm watching.
Really?
There is zero psychedelic experience after that.
Right.
And I mean,
like it negates it?
It completely wipes it out. I feel none of the psychedelic. It doesn't matter what it is.
Well, that's good to know as a ripcord.
Or mushrooms, or it could be.
Yeah.
But now I'm going to be high, right?
Right.
So
right.
It's and I think that would be the case for. I can't estimate percentages, but I would say there's probably a fair amount of people that experience it that way.
Yeah. Yeah,
but try it, like if you're fucking into it, try it.
Right.
Don't take my word for shit. Like try this out, that's the whole thing. Like just give it an honest go when you're ready.
Everybody, look, different strokes for different folks. It's just like the diet stuff. Maybe some people being a vegan works. Maybe some people not smoking. Everyone's got their own jam. I think I was just watching them talk about this Kevin Durant injury that just happened, and they were saying that, you need to listen to your body. And that's another intuitive thing that I, for instance, I was playing basketball the other day. And after the fourth game, I just had this intuition. Like, if I play another game, I'm going to roll an ankle. Something's going to happen. I just knew to fucking stop and not push it any further. I feel like that applies to that as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like being able, to all
just listening to you, there's that intuitive, just listening to yourself and your body and knowing your own limits. Whereas before, when I was younger, I would just gun it. You know what I mean? It was just like trying to get fucked up. And I did all the external, like, partying out there and the chicks and stuff, that now it's kind of going inside, and that's the real work. That's what using these things not as a party but as some medicine. It's powerful stuff, because it's not just like taking mushrooms that used to just be for a goof and a party and a laugh, but you could use that for some fucking therapy, man.
Yeah, even the microdose.
Absolutely.
That's what's great. Jim Fadiman goes through a ton of trip reports and everything from curing depression to thinking outside the box. I forget who wrote it. It might have been. I don't fucking know. Who cares? But people with multiple outlets have written about the Silicon Valley CEOs using that to problem solve, right? So it can be for innovation. It can be for creativity and new thinking. It can be for problem solving. Like, shit's going on in my life I need to sort. I don't have access to go to the Amazon. I don't have the funds, but I can microdose and really focus on that and have a contemplation where I see things with a new lens. And I think that's the beauty of those things. Can you have the concert dose and go see the XX or somebody at the Hollywood Bowl on a little LSD?
Right.
Fuck yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
But
concert dose. I've never heard that before.
Yeah, that's
I like
also
that.
fat of it,
to be able to deal with the 50,000 people and
well, you don't want to go too deep.
No,
but
you don't.
It's also a little bit more than a microdose.
Interesting.
Right? So somewhere in between. And I think that those things, just understanding the why behind everything you do, which is something I didn't have when I was getting beat with a dildo. Mm-hmm. Just know the why, right? Like, why do I want to do this? Is it to feel a different way? Like, I can accomplish that with very little. And we all alter our consciousness every fucking day. Caffeine is the world's greatest drug.
Yep.
Alcohol might be right behind that. Mm-hmm. Like, we're constantly trying to alter our consciousness. Even when I do fucking breath work, it's to alter my state, right? So figuring out what leads to a net positive, and that's something that I've sorted because, like yourself, I've done a lot of bad drugs over the years in college. And, does this leave me more whole than when I started? That's the question I ask.
Yeah.
And there are bad drugs that might make me feel good in the time being. And if I feel like shit the next day, it's not worth it anymore. I got to show up as dad. And showing up hungover is a fucking dick move. It's real bad.
Yeah, and alcohol, I feel like, is the one that anytime I've ended up in trouble, alcohol was at the root of that evening. Was making me make the worst decisions and just doing dumb shit. That is a low vibe, because it's like saying, like, just putting the word drugs into one box isn't right. That's like saying food. Well, there's a grass-fed steak and there's a gummy bear. It's all food, but one of them's going to be a lot better for you. Just like drugs, there's some that are going to be good for you, and then there's fucking pharmaceutical drugs that are ruining our fucking society, and then you got some that are. There's this sort of shift happening right now that I feel like it's sort of like another hippie movement almost, and people like you and Rogan and all you guys are out there on the front lines having these talks on the podcast and opening up people's minds. Even people like me, like, I'm learning so much about shit just from sitting there and listening to a podcast and finding somebody and then going down a YouTube wormhole on them, and there's something happening right now that you can feel that's cool. It's almost like the next wave. Because back originally when there was this psychedelic movement before, it was in the, talk about set and setting, like doing it in a laboratory when you got some doctor looking at you and fucking, that doesn't seem like the right way to
or
gauge.
30,000 people at Golden Gate Park listening to some amazing music, but it's a party, right? It's like, that's something that Terrence McKenna said too. If people want to get into Terrence McKenna, there's a good podcast called The Psychedelic Salon with Lorenzo Haggerty, and he's been on Rogan's. He has pulled from the archives tons of lectures that Terrence did over the years, and you can listen to all of them. It's really rad, but he does a Q&A after his lectures, and somebody got up and asked him, is there a wrong way to do psychedelics? And he said, yes, if you don't take enough. And everyone laughed, and he said, I'm serious. And he looked back on the psychedelic 60s and said a lot of people, they'd roll a joint, they'd have a drink of wine, and they'd eat a mushroom cap or two, or have a little acid with it. And they never, you were always external. You think of all the constant onslaught of media, from music to TV at night to the news in the morning to you name it, even podcasts and Audible, right? There's a point where you still need to have space for yourself.
Absolutely. Right? I have to force myself to have that space.
Yeah. And I'm not saying everybody needs to go the heroic dose, but if you want the true psychedelic experience, create the space for that to work. Yeah. So if you are going to do the microdose, be in nature. Or if you're going to do concert dose, that's cool. But
and
just
put your phone
variety.
off. I see so many people like, I don't see so many people, but when you got your phone out, that just sucks you back into so many things that do not pair well with the journey, which would be taking, LSD or whatever it may be. Your cell phone just pulls you out of it, and I think is your worst enemy. And you don't fucking need your phone for that 8 hours. I can't stress that one enough. I've seen people, in the middle of, like, this friend of mine went out to Joshua Tree and was doing mushrooms, and they were just posting every 5 minutes on their phone, and I'm texting them, just put your fucking phone away and just enjoy it. It doesn't have to be shared with everybody. You know what I mean? Like, that's, I think, is a big one that maybe this next generation of people who grow up with their phones don't know, because we grew up with half our life prior to cell phones, internet, all that bullshit. So I feel like we have a better gauge and a pulse of being able to put it down. But some of these young kids, they are just so attached that I think that could really fuck up your high in a lot of ways, or rob you of your experience.
I was recently, no doubt, we were recently at a bachelor party in Joshua Tree, and I had some incredible acid, and I realized how strong it was for me, but I didn't really think about how strong it was for everyone else. And we did one of these beautiful hikes to Ryan Mountain, which is about 50. I think it goes from 1,000 feet to 5,500 feet. So it's a good steep incline. It's not far. It's like 2 miles, and we get up there, and I wanted to capture that moment, so I took one video, and that was it. So I think that was the happy medium to having a memory of that, and a panoramic photo, and then I'm good.
But you just use it as a camera,
right? And I don't need to have it out the whole time. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And then I get to experience the medicine. I get to lay in the sun on top of that and see fucking in every direction. You could see Big Bear with snow on it. Wow. You can see all these things.
That's Ryan Mountain. Yeah, was that within Joshua Tree? Because
it is in the national park.
I'm actually driving out there tonight.
Oh, you got to do it.
Yeah, I'm taking the RV out there. I'm taking Bernie out there.
You will love it.
I name everyone listening. That if you give a fuck, I finally figured out a name for my RV. It's Bernie Vanders. So it's a play on Burning Man. It's a play on Bernie Sanders. I'm not necessarily. It just sounds right. But yeah, burning. It's like Bernie is short for Burning Man, Burning Van. There's something there. I'm still working on the name. So I'm taking Bernie out to the desert for a couple of days. My buddy has this place, if you ever want to check it out, called Indigotopia, which is a sound bath retreat with, it's out basically right outside of Pioneer Town, or it's in Pioneer Town.
In the Integratron?
No, but
dome?
No, it's not in there. But that it's a more of a little personal, smaller experience. It's not in a dome, it's in their house.
Okay.
But it's just a great place where you can go out there with a group of people and you have all this open space without having to go into the actual national park limits of Joshua Tree, but it's right outside, so you still have the same rock formations which look like, Mars when you're on. I mean, it's that might be my favorite backdrop for doing something like that, is the desert. There's something about the color scheme and the temperature and the wind. There's something out there that's really magical, even better than like a tropical beach or something, which for me personally, the desert, there's something
it's special,
calming about it.
Yeah, it's special.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, Indigotopia is a great place to go out with a group of friends and do a little reset. I'm going to go out there tonight just for a couple of days. That's what's so great about living out here, is you could go out in 2 hours and be on another planet. So I'm going from my little beach apartment to the desert in 2 hours. Most people probably don't have that at their disposal, so they're not as fortunate as living in California. Is a great place to be able to get all that shit and have access to, good medicine. I wonder if, like, people in the Midwest, would they even be able to find the right medicine or the right shaman? I imagine it's not that easy. I mean, I'm in this world, I'm around it, I could find good shit.
Yeah, I can't obviously give too many tricks here because of the fact that I'm a dad and I have a job and all that and I live stateside. But the dark web has fucking everything.
Right.
So it doesn't matter where you live.
Right.
You can find it.
Right.
And there's, tutorials on how to go about that. I think Ben Greenfield wrote one. He's a friend of mine on bengreenfieldfitness.com. I'll throw him a plug. Maybe if you search there for it, how to order drugs off the dark web.
Yeah.
A tutorial. And then, of course, just if you want to save up and do the deep thing, like you can go to Soltara and it is.
I'll look that up.
Exceeds
Soltara.
all fucking expectations.
Okay, that's great.
It really does. It's an immaculate place.
That's cool. That sounds like that sounds like to me the way I would want to do it. Not to be an elitist, but I'm lucky enough to be able to afford the time and be able to go down and do that 10-day one or whatever it would be, and really have that cushion before and after and have that time to process it, because I don't think I'd want to do it any other way. I know myself, I would get sucked back into everything else and not be able to apply everything I learned back into the real world, which, I did. We talked about this before. I did the 5-MeO a year ago. I'm still processing that shit. I'm still figuring stuff out. And that one was a big game changer for me. It was the ultimate truth serum. It's still tripping me out a year later.
It's a powerful one.
Oh,
it might be the most. It's certainly
compared to ayahuasca. Could you compare the two? I mean, I don't understand the molecular structure, but it's pretty similar.
They
isn't
are
it?
similar. I mean, there's a couple things here. One, like I mentioned earlier, I wouldn't order these. I don't find that doesn't sit well with me to say which one is better than the other, or which one's stronger than the other. Certainly, the strength of 5-MeO is unmatched.
And it's a shorter blast off.
It is a
20-minute.
blast off.
Time didn't exist when I did it, but
even NN-DMT is much.
What is
what is
that's
that? That's the regular DMT you would smoke,
okay.
right? It's the DMT in our brains. It's also the DMT in ayahuasca.
Right.
Ayahuasca has a couple of different plants traditionally, and then a lot of the Amazon will have different admixtures. Tobacco is a sister plant to ayahuasca, so all these things work in harmony and concert together. But basically, you have one which is purgative, the vine. It does a number of other things, and it helps activate. It is the thing that activates the DMT, so you can sustain that orally. But the ceremony will last 4 to 6 hours, sometimes longer. And
it's a lot more work.
I think when it's slower, it allows you to process things a little bit better, because you're not just having one vision after another. I mean, I've had experiences where that happened, but for the most part, you get some stuff, you're able to process it. Maybe you have a purge, and then you circle back and you keep going back and forth, toggling between getting downloads and then having time to process. And there's been times where ayahuasca's worked very quickly for me, and then I had a whole ton of shit come up for me all at once, and I had to work on that and how to find my center and how to quiet my mind and get still. And there's, I've done it 26 times. And to put this in perspective, Dennis McKenna, the brother of Terrence, who is also a wizard in his own right, he's done hundreds of ceremonies, and he says that it's new every time to him. The only reason he'll ever stop is if it stops teaching him something. So a lot of these people, I mean, the apprentices that I met at Soltara have been working for several years. No one's got it figured out. And they've worked with several amazing shaman who've worked their entire lives, or healers, whatever you want to call it, taitas, curanderos. They have a level of mastery, but they still haven't figured out everything about it. And that's really impressive to me, to know that there is truly no limit to the potential of these plant medicines.
Yeah, it's funny. Whenever I have a guest on, if they're about this, the talk always ends up here, because it's the most interesting thing to me to talk about. No matter if the person's a musician or a fighter or whatever. Let's switch gears for a little bit. Then I'm going to let you get out of here. What about right now? Who are you a fan of? And are you still a fan of UFC and mixed martial arts? And who out there interests you or is fun to watch? Doesn't necessarily have to be your weight class, but who's out there gets your attention?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still a fan. I would call myself a casual fan because I don't watch all of them. There's a ton of them now. ESPN took over the deal from Fox.
Yeah, that's big.
And they're on all the time. And you got to pay like $6 a month for ESPN Plus, which I do. But we'll watch quite a few of them. We don't order every pay-per-view or watch every fight night or some of the smaller shows, but we watch a lot. And all the guys that I used to train with that are still fighting, Luke Rockhold, Cain Velasquez, who had a tough loss with injury last time. I mean,
that was knee. Was that his knee that went? Yeah,
and
I was at that fight. That was in Phoenix. Yeah,
that was super tough. And obviously, we went to school there at ASU together.
Right.
It was a tough one. But Daniel Cormier, and then
they're all San Jose, trained out of San Jose, which is where you did,
those
right?
are all my old training partners. Right. And
Luke Rockhold has a big fight coming up, didn't he? Go up a weight class or something? Yeah, I got to hang out with him in Santa Cruz. He's a cool motherfucker.
He's fucking awesome.
Man, he's a bad man.
Great dude.
He's a bad man.
And so I think watching all the old friends go, that's where I'm usually have the most attachment to the outcome. Generally, I'm just a fan, and I'm not necessarily a fan of anyone in particular. If they're like, oh, these guys are gonna fight, like. I missed the Ferguson and Cerrone fight because we were coming back from Mexico. I wanted to see that.
Yeah.
I really want to see Khabib and Ferguson fight.
Yeah.
Because Khabib is a training partner of mine out of AK. So like I following those guys and seeing.
Yeah, he was in San Jose, right? Wasn't he as well?
Yep. He came in straight from Russia and it was like already 26-0 or 22-0, something crazy. And
Ferguson's got such a weird style that again, I don't know much about fighting, but just a total outside fan. That's an unorthodox dude who doesn't see, like, what the fuck is what
I'm a
is
fan
that?
of his fighting style as well.
What is going on with that guy?
He's really fun to watch.
He bloodies people up.
There's a lot of good talented people out there, and you see the sport coming up, especially in the women's.
If you squint at women's, it looks like two dudes fighting now. Like if you squint, it used to look a little, you know what I mean? But now it's evolving so fast. It's almost like skating or anything else or snowboarding. Every year it just gets more and more. You're like, they're doing triple backflips now on motorcycles. Like where's
these girls throw fucking granite? Dude. They got dynamite in their hands, and that's really fun to watch too. I definitely am a casual fan, but I love watching it, and it could be some people that I've never heard of before, which happens more often than not now, to people that I've followed for years, and those are really fun to see.
Do you ever train anymore at all, or you just you're just staying in shape doing other stuff, but you're not doing the fighting, you're not rolling, or were you a wrestler? Was that your?
I wrestled in junior high and high school, which is I'm going to the UFC a white belt, and I actually did go into the UFC as a white belt in jiu-jitsu.
Right.
That's a really big challenge to overcome.
Right.
And a lot of these guys that come in, high level wrestlers from college or the Olympics, they do very well. Henry Cejudo, Dana Cormier, John Jones, because then allows you to work on those other weaknesses and become masters of the craft everywhere. I gravitated towards Muay Thai. I really appreciated that. And, loved to stand and bang, but eventually had to get better at jiu-jitsu because I kept getting taken down and never really mastered wrestling at that level either. So I got taken down a lot. I competed in jiu-jitsu a little bit just for me, not for like big tournaments and things like that. I never had delusions of grandeur. Like this is the next thing I'm going to do.
Yeah.
There's guys that have been black belts longer than I had been training jiu-jitsu.
Right.
So thinking of it that way, it's definitely, jiu-jitsu was fun because it was a way I could compete and push myself and be in that uncomfortable place.
Right.
But I got hurt about a year ago in training, and I tore my knee. And, with my little guy, he's 3 years old, I had to tell him, like, sorry, daddy can't run. Daddy can't chase you for a fucking year.
You got to weigh it out.
Yeah, and I'm not being paid to do that anymore.
Yeah, why do it?
I still fuck with the heavy bag. I still enjoy, like letting the let out and having fun there. And I'll do some technique on the ground where somebody's in town and they're, we have great people come through Onit all the time in Austin. So if I can, I'll get on and do more of the learning and tutorials and really still be a student of the game,
right?
But I'm not pushing it. I'm not rolling hard. I'm not doing a lot of those things just because I'm trying to take care of myself a bit more these days.
Yeah, keeping that rookie mind is what's the term? Not rookie, but beginner's brain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good way to live. Keeping it always trying new things rather, and learning and putting things together. I got to what's his name? One of Chris Ryan's mentors, Stanley Krippner. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Heard
but
the name.
You dig this guy. He's sort of one of the few people that's in the world of spirituality and psychedelics. He is accepted by the scientific community almost more than anyone else. So he's that dude. And he's like 75, 80 years old. And I got to meet him on his birthday and go hang out with him. And everyone's asking him questions. And he's sort of like this, this legend. Somebody asked him, what's the secret to staying young forever? And he said, always learn new things. I don't care if you're 70 years old, start taking a guitar lesson. Your brain will carve the new neural pathways if you start to learn and you keep that beginner brain with stuff that actually keeps you younger, longer in your brain, which in effect keeps you. That's everything.
Yeah.
So that was a pearl of wisdom I got to hear directly from him that I always remember. So I went out and got a guitar and I sit there in front of the TV and I'm like awkwardly, and if you almost get high off of it, your brain is like, oh, this is fucking instead of sitting there playing video games or just watching something, like fucking try something new, as uncomfortable as it may be. That's some magic stuff right there.
Yeah, and be okay with sucking for a while.
Yeah, it's okay
Anything
to
you
suck.
start, that's something I tell people all the time when they get into jiu-jitsu. It's like, dude, you're going to suck for years.
Yep.
You're going to tap for years. Tap early, tap often, don't get hurt. Do your best to go injury-free. Check your ego at the door when it comes to that. You know, it's not about being the best. Eventually it can be that, but just stick around, you know, and that goes for anything. Whether you're learning an instrument or learning martial arts or even learning a new sport, be okay with being shitty for a little while, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's okay to suck. I actually had to stop doing jiu-jitsu. One day I went to class and I remember I was just getting my ass beat by this guy and he's just got my arm. And I just remember this dude just sitting on my face with my arm back here and I'm just banged up and I'm smelling this dude's ass. And I remember thinking, I'm paying money for this. And that was the last time I ever went. That was the last time I ever went. And also it gets humbling, man. I'm in my mid 40s now and my body, like in my mind, I'll go play basketball and and it hit me the other day. I was playing basketball and these kids 18 years old are running circles around me. And I remember thinking, oh my God, I was my whole life with the guy running around circles around the 40-year-old. I'm the 40-year-old now? Like that. Damn. It fucked me up. So accepting that and being humbled by what my body can do compared to what it used to do. It's one thing to get the gray hairs, but when you physically jump for the rebound and can't get it like you used to anymore, but your brain does, a lot of acceptance. You gotta sit in that, and it's fucking, that one's no joke, dude.
Yeah, brother. Yeah. I'm experiencing that myself.
Yeah. Dude, thank you so much for coming by. We'll do it again another time because we could talk about this shit all day. And I appreciate your wisdom. And I'm going to write down some of these things you told me about from the books to the place in Costa Rica because I still have some stuff that you recommended before. The Psychedelic Traveler's Guide is the book? Explorer's Guide. So I got some catching up to do. You're a fucking legend. Thanks for your time, brother.
Thank you, brother.
Appreciate you. Thank you. I love you too.